fighting on the same side. It felt like old times. But I guess we both knew it would end this way.
Do you remember that night when you told me Lois was pregnant?
You knew, even before I said anything.
That was a good memory.
From another lifetime.
I miss the people we were then.
Me too.
So, I watched the Injustice movie, and well...
It could have been a lot better. It could have been slightly better written.
Yeah. So a bit of history. The Injustice movie is an adaptation of the 2013 game and comic called Injustice: Gods Among Us. Essentially, the story of all three is Superman, after being tricked into killing his wife and unborn child by the Joker, becomes a dictator and, along with other members of the Justice League, fight Batman and his insurgency, seeking to stop his New World Order. Now, looking at the story itself, it feels like something along the lines of, say, Marvel's Civil War, which, as a comic, came out about 6 years prior, but you could also say it was continuing the idea of 1996's story Kingdom Come, the idea of Superman essentially forcing his ideas and views on others and becoming, well, kind of fascist. And I always felt this was a good idea over, say, Batman being the one to go down this route, because it's kind of obvious that Batman would be the one to snap. Having it be the best of us is just sort of, well, at the time, revolutionary. But now it feels kind of a bit overplayed these years. You know, evil Superman has sort of become a trope in itself with characters like Homelander, Omni-Man, of course, Superman Red Sun, Brightburn, etc. Injustice itself is a very different story in its comic and game form than the movie, and that's where the problem lies. And I hesitate to use the word sort of soulless when talking about it, but I think that's the word for it. You see, stories like Civil War, Kingdom Come, Dark Knight Returns, and Injustice are sort of about something, and when you adapt those stories, whatever changes you want to make should never come at the cost of what those stories are about. I've always viewed Injustice as being about not just what happens when a good man goes to war, but also the responsibility/duty of those with great power. Would it be better if Superman just sort of imposed his will on everyone? That the Justice League goes in and forces all these governments to make peace under threat of death? There's a scene in the comics where Hal Jordan and Barry Allen hold the U.S. Congress hostage and to stop it from shutting down in response to Superman, and while I'm sure we all like the idea of, superheroes getting the government to do their job, as opposed to this petty squabbling, it's not really the place of superheroes to strong-arm governments, because where does it stop? And that's sort of the important question. What is the purpose of superheroes? And how far should they go? How far shouldn't they go? And think again of this scene from Murder on the Orient Express.
No, you behave like this and we become just savages in the street. Where juries and executioners, that they elect themselves. No, it is medieval. The rule of law, it must be held high. And if it falls, you pick it up and hold it even higher. For all society, all civilized people will have nothing to shelter them if it is destroyed.
Anyway, let's talk about why this movie is, well, ass. Because it is. I'm sorry, but it is. So for the sake of it, we're going to narrow the critique down to 4 characters being Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, and Harley Quinn. The reason being is that one thing this movie gets wrong is how the characters are affected by the story and the events. Harley, for example, is removed from any real personality in the movie. You get a very much cookie-cutter, bare minimum Harley Quinn. If you look at this Harley, there's no real substance to anything that's happened to her. Yes, she mentions the Joker is dead, but it never feels like it matters outside of that instance. And of course, with removal of Black Canary from the story, the dynamic that she had with Canary and Oliver is just kind of gone. Even her, and of course her relationship with other characters is gone too. And again, it's very cut and paste. There's no mention of the other important things to Harley's character, not just the fact that, she was there. Like, she was directly responsible for what happened to Lois, and by extent, Metropolis. She also mentions that there's also the hint that, she knew Joker was messed up. Enough that she's kept a big secret from not just Joker, but all of us for years. And it's a really cool thing about that, and it helps flesh out Harley's character. Essentially, Harley and Flash in the Injustice story are sort of one and the same there, that they're sort of on the edges of the story. They're kind of along for the ride, and the decisions they make are a result of the actions surrounding the story. And it's good because of that. Next we come to Wonder Woman. Now Wonder Woman by far is possibly the most sort of in line, and at the same time most separate from her character. Watching this movie, you'd think she's just sort of siding with Superman because he's Superman and she totally wants to bone him, but that's kind of it. Now, in the comic, Diana does certainly have feelings for Superman. She definitely does want to bone him, but she does have her own agenda when it comes to Superman's regime, even saying she's been waiting for Superman to do something like this for years. And we'll see how the Amazons and even the Greek gods play into her story. The movie really just has Diana representing the entire Superman is right because it's Superman group, only paying lip service to the version of the character Injustice represents. You could argue that in the comic Injustice, Wonder Woman actually is the real villain of the story. She is constantly whispering in Superman's ear, telling him what he wants to hear, actively making sure he doesn't get the information that would possibly change his mind about what he's doing. She's complicit in just about everything, and it's really hard to tell who's worse, Wonder Woman or Sinestro in the story. Batman is possibly his most boring here. Like, this may be the most boring version of Batman I've seen in a while. Actually, the whole Bat family is kind of bland and watered down. Let's ignore the fact that, like everyone else, they look terrible. There's no real attempt to flesh these characters out. Batman himself feels, again, boring. His personal stance in Injustice has very much always been a stance that superheroes and the Justice League should not be killing and should not be deposing governments and interfering in the military. He holds Superman to a very high stance, which is why he not only believes that Superman wouldn't kill the Joker, but even more that he should be better than that. Even more so, what he's really saying, he should be better than him. So in other words, if Batman can refuse the desire to kill the Joker, Superman should be able to do it too. That's pretty much what he's saying. Like, if I can do it, Superman can definitely do it. And there's sort of an argument that when Batman says, "You're scaring people, Clark," Superman says, "That's what you do." And what Batman's really saying is, "I do it because I'm not a good person. I do it because I'm not perfect." Batman views Superman as the ultimate hero, as the best model. That's why he's never really upset that, Nightwing decided to, train with Superman for, like, yeah, that's who you should go with. You should strive to be more like Superman. Not like me. Everything Batman does is make sure his kids don't end up like him. But in this story here, we see that there's a slow descent from, I'm pretty sure we can do this too. We're sort of desperate to do this, and we'll see how far Batman's willing to go to either help Superman realize that what he's doing is wrong, or just ultimately stop and imprison him. We see him helping to kidnap Raven. He gets pills that gives everyone superpowers, allowing them to fight Superman's regime, becoming Etrigan. All of it just sort of blurs the line, and like Captain America in Civil War, you find yourself wondering not only if Batman can win, you start to wonder if it's really just too stubborn to admit that Superman could actually be right, and that this is the right way to go. But a lot of what we see is in itself kind of underdone. Even his relationship with Damian and Dick feels kind of, they're relying on the audience to bring their shared history of Nightwing and Damian and Batman all together and use that for ourselves. And I think it kind of does it a disservice. Also, the removal of Alfred from the story kind of waters down it, because Alfred's story, the role Alfred plays in Injustice, to me is super important, especially because Alfred has a relationship with pretty much every member of the Bat family at this time. He has a relationship with Batman. He has a relationship with Damian, with Nightwing, with Superman, and Catwoman, and how Alfred reacts to the story as well as Superman is one of the coolest things about Injustice as a story. Also, it's golden. It's golden. If you know, you know. You've probably seen the meme. Now on to Superman, and I want to address some criticisms from the fans of Superman that, of course, are tired of this whole Superman is evil idea. Not to say that isn't a valid criticism, that Superman is evil trope is kind of overplayed and overdone at this point, but I'm mostly addressing something along the lines of Grant Morrison's critique of the idea being ridiculous in his interview from Comic Book Resources. It's something I've come to terms with and pared down to it coming down to the patriarchal structures that have been oppressing us, and Superman can easily be made to be representative of that. This dad-like figure looking out for us can be made authoritarian, but I think that's a mistake, Morrison tells CBR. I think the idea that Superman would react to the death of Lois Lane by becoming a tyrant is ridiculous. my mom and dad died and I didn't become a tyrant. If I can handle it, Superman can handle it. And I think that in itself is unfair. It's a bit different when Batman has an opinion, because Batman sort of exists in that world with that version of Superman. But again, it's still equally unfair to think that he would be fine from that. Far be it from me to disagree with Grant Morrison, superstar writer that he is, having written great works like All-Star Superman, Multiversity, the confusing You Shouldn't Let Newcomers Read Final Crisis, and of course his Batman run is stellar. So I'm not saying Grant Morrison wouldn't know what he's talking about, I just particularly disagree with this view of it. To expect Superman to be okay with being tricked into murdering his wife and unborn child, followed by the destruction of his home of Metropolis, is kind of unfair. He may be an alien with ridiculous powers, but he's always been human. He's always essentially been an Earthling in every other way that matters. And to expect him to be able to handle something that even Batman struggles with, not killing the Joker, is, I don't think, the right way to look at it. The idea that Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, all of them, are anything more than just good people doing the best they can is kind of the point of when we see stories like BVS. It was definitely the point of Watchmen, mostly, and of course this here.
There's no such thing as the Doctor. I'm just a bloke in a box, telling stories. And I didn't come here because I'm ashamed. A bit of shame never hurt anyone. I came because you're sick and you asked. And because sometimes, on a good day, if I try very hard, I'm not some old Time Lord who ran away.
So let's come to Superman himself. Let's come back to Superman anyway. Superman, I think, gets the best/worst treatment here. On the plus side, this is a story where Superman is center stage, despite Batman being there. Often in these kind of movies, Batman ends up taking center stage. And look at something like, say, Superman, Batman, Apocalypse. It's a story about Superman finding his cousin, and all anyone really talks about is the fact that Batman definitely defeated Darkseid. He definitely did. He definitely did. Like, it's not up for debate. But Injustice really is centered on Superman and his choices that drive the story. The downside is, well, this story is kind of lacking the teeth of that story. Doesn't do anything with it. In regards to his character, the setup is there, but little else to sell the idea. Throughout the first story, there's the feeling that if Superman just talked to someone, he'd probably stop and just let himself grieve, as Batman suggested. And even Wonder Woman knew this in the comic, which is why she didn't deliver Aquaman's message to him. But here, for the most part, it's just his descent to dictator with little to flesh it out. It's a process of him just doing what he thinks is best by force and refusing to see otherwise. The ends justify the means. Superman's descent is in part due to other avenues of justice failing him, like the governments of the world, Batman, even the Green Lantern Corps, all revealed in one way or another to be complicit in the loss of his home, his city, and his world. There are two stories in Injustice that help flesh Superman out. The first is the story of Martha tells Lex about Clark as a child when he threw a tantrum over a blanket he lost, and how Clark feels guilty that everyone else has died, Lois, his child, the people of Metropolis, and that he survived and he can't quite move past it. In other words, he's dealing with his grief, and he's kind of afraid to face it. Or rather, he's not dealing with his grief, because he's terrified of it. The other story is from a guy named Sam, who remembers when Superman helped him fix his bike, or rather, saved him, made his bike worse, and helped him put a new wheel on it. As Sam said, Superman used to inspire people. Now he really just frightens them, as he now forces the world to work a certain way, instead of helping to guide it. This scene, I think, sums up Superman.
I'm not a bad man. I am not a hero. I'm definitely not a president. And no, I'm not an officer. You know what I am? I am an idiot with a box and a screwdriver. Just passing through, helping out.
And this, I think, is what the movie itself missed, as well as a certain Superman book. It kind of removed the simplicity of the character, which the comic and game were able to do with the same number of scenes. The premise of Injustice with Superman is what happens when you take everything from someone. how much is too much? And then instead of actually facing one's grief, he decides to use his power proactively in a way that he normally wouldn't before. In the same way that Zero Year mentioned that Batman is taking all of his anger and rage out on Gotham City by fighting crime, Superman is in his own way taking his rage and anger and sadness and loss out on the world. He has to force it to make sense because it doesn't. Like Lois, his child, the people of Metropolis, they didn't do anything wrong. And someone failed them. And the world failed them. So Superman has to go no more. No more. And yeah, that's sort of what I think is wrong with the Injustice movie. It pays very little lip service to it. It doesn't flesh out any of its characters in a way that makes it set up properly, especially Superman. So, yeah, that's my thoughts on Injustice. What you guys think about it? Did you like it? Did you hate it? Leave your thoughts in the comment section. I'll catch you all later. This is Buggy Think Tank signing off. Thanks for watching. As always, may your fandom serve